Hey y'all! Alright, you're gonna see my big face and I'm gonna shrink it here in a second. So I was perusing the depths of Twitter and I recognized some things about exactly why I have a kind of a problem with how a lot of psychology, but assertiveness in particular, are rolled out. So I follow some really great people on Twitter, really great therapists, and I'm always looking for really good ones. No BS therapist is great. I don't agree with her much politically, but I think she's quite intelligent. She's got a lot of things right. And she recommended this take on from the Atlantic called How Americans Became So Sensitive to Harm. And it's about concept creep. Now, concept creep, I'm going to butcher this because I read it a few hours ago now. Concept creep is basically when a diagnostic in, like for example, psychology starts to bleed its way into other areas of our life. A good example of this that the article uses is trauma. So now everything is trauma, everything is PTSD, and it sort of vertically and horizontally works its way into different parts of culture. So it's a good 15,000 foot criticism of, I guess, psychology and how the nomenclature, its effect on our communities. But if we're to zoom out a little bit further to 30,000 feet and we'll look at psychology itself, that is my criticism, and I think it's perfectly illustrated with assertiveness. So let's go to assertiveness here. What I would like to see with psychology is sort of 80% focus on optimization and 20% focus on pathologizing, whereas it's the opposite. And I'm of course biased, and I might be wrong, but that's how I see it, and I'd like to see it. I'd like to see more focus on culture and cultural growth and understanding what culture is. And that's why I focus on assertiveness, because in 17 years of coaching, I've noticed that effective communication with your subordinates, your boss, your spouse, your kids, your partners, whatever, every relationship in your life contributes or detracts from your emotional and psychological health. And your ability to communicate with those people is sort of paramount to your psychological health. So all of my coaching clients needed help with uncomfortable conversations, and so that's why we went down this assertiveness rabbit hole, and lo and behold, we find that it is 75% pathologizing. So let's go into the original, this is the building blocks of assertive communication. It's very good. Like, I don't think it's inaccurate. I just think that a model that was focused on optimizing rather than pathologizing would be more useful. So let's dig into it, but not too much. We've got the passive aggressive, and assertive communication styles. So let's look at all these. Let's see if I can minimize this little guy. All right. So the passive communicator, this is a lot of the people pleasers. This is a lot of agreeability in the big five. So this is the passive communicators. Others' rights, needs take precedence over mine. So they're not going to say what it is that they think, because they either don't think they're worthy, they don't have conscious access to that information, or they don't think it's their place at that particular time, which is kind of a cop-out. The passive aggressive is, look, I'm going to say what I need to say, but I'm going to say it, subtly or sarcastically, so that you know what I'm saying, and a little giggle afterwards. That's what I mean, but I'm not going to tell you because I'm still quite concerned. And then you've got the aggressive, which is inappropriate, honest, direct, expressive, attacking, blaming, controlling. Basically, this person is not going to be beholden to any of the cultural norms or the appropriate norms. And then you've got the assertive, which is appropriate, honest, direct, self-enhancing, expressive, etc. They're going to, assertiveness is described as your perfect right. It's expressing yourself while not, it's expressing your own rights and your own self-expression without inhibiting the rights of others. Okay, so the problem with this is that it is pathologizing. It follows like the fundamental problem that I see and we can do this experiment right now. It takes 10 seconds. Are you ready? Right? Close your eyes. Do not think of a camel. Now, everyone thought of a camel there because you can't not think about something when it's presented to you. That's just not how we work. You might have been clever for a second. Oh, he said camel, and then you think of a camel. Oh, I'm going to think of a dog. You might be trying to be clever, but for a second there, you're going to think of a camel. And I would rather not fall down that rabbit hole. So what this chart here is saying essentially is don't be passive. Don't be passive aggressive. And don't be aggressive. And while you're thinking about all these things, you need to be assertive. But adding those components together does not make assertiveness. You can try and fit that scale in. I've tried to say, passive plus aggressive communication makes assertiveness. But what psychology really, in my opinion, gets wrong is that passiveness or passivity is a sort of blank slate of no intelligence. And it's just not true, right? When you're passive, when you are a passive communicator, you are running a lot of scripts upstairs. There's a lot going on when you're not self-expressive, and most of it is thinking, is this appropriate? Is this the right time to say it? Am I safe? Am I the right person to say it? Right? I don't actually know what I want to say. There's all of these scripts, mostly appropriateness. Like, should I say it? Is this the right thing? When I feel guilty, are the cultural norms adding up to a point where I can say what it is that I need to say? And am I being appropriate in doing so? So there is just a boatload of implicit intelligence going on with passive people. It is not a net zero of intelligence. And that's not what they're saying, but it effectively comes across that way. Is that there's nothing going on. I'm not saying anything. I'm not bringing anything out. Okay, so what is going on with a passive communicator is following a bunch of implicit rules that are concerned with the culture. And this is something else that psychology really glazes over, and you don't see a lot of work about this. And it's this inappropriate, appropriate thing. It's inappropriate or appropriate. And that is the fundamental question of the passive and the passive-aggressive communicator. Is this appropriate? Should I be saying this? Is it safe? Am I going to lose relationships by saying what I need to say? How do I say it without losing a relationship? But none of these things sort of add up to creating an assertive piece of assertive communication. And so that's why I would like to sort of slightly adjust the passive side of things. Aggressive, I think, is actually kind of fine, because if you dig down aggressive to the individual and what intelligence is required to be aggressive, it's self-interest. I'm going to say what I want. This is what I want. I want this thing. And that's the balance that we're doing here. It's appropriateness plus balance with self-interest or greed or passion. And so I came up with this scale here, which I've stolen from about 13 different disciplines. We've got individual agency, and then tribal intelligence together make assertive communication. So I like to use the example of manners, right? Manners is a really good example. Like, manners is assertive communication. Let's look at it on the scale, which I don't think is wrong. I just think it's pointing in the wrong direction. Appropriate, honest, direct, self-enhancing, expressive, self-confident, empathetic to the emotions of all involved. So let's say you've got little Judy. Judy's a little girl. Judy's a little girl. She's sitting on her high chair. She wants some juice, all right? She's 2. She wants some juice. And what does a 2-year-old do? A 2-year-old knows to yell out exactly what they want. Give me juice, okay? So that's agency. That's over here. That's Judy's agency. She knows what it is that she wants, her self-interest right here. Now, Mum hears Judy, say, give me juice, and she's the tribe. Mum is the security. Mum is where all the self-interest is. Sorry, mum is where the tribal rules are. Mum's where the appropriate, the implicit, the social intelligence, the social set of parameters that we have to follow so that we can effectively get along with each other. That's why it's called. That's why we call it tribal intelligence. So Judy says, you know, I want juice, and then Mum comes along and says, no, honey, you want juice? You have to say, may I please have some juice? And then Judy says, okay, may I please have some juice? And then Mum gets to the juice, and Mum says, now you got to say thank you, and Judy says thank you. Okay, so has that met all of our criteria, right? Where we've got Judy wants the juice, Judy follows the rules of tribal communication, all right? And then that adds up to assertiveness. Now, does this situation create honest, appropriate? Is it appropriate? Yes. Is it honest? Yes. Is it direct? Yes. Is it self-enhancing? Juice is undecidedly self-enhancing. Is it expressive? Yes, she's expressing herself. Self-confident? I suppose so. Empathetic to the emotions of all involved. Well, because she's following the tribal rules, yes, she's empathetic to the emotions of all involved. She's following the appropriate communication rules for that particular, you know, for our world, for the Western world, of how to get what it is that you want. And so this appropriate tribal thing is something that is probably more sociological, because it's about a culture instead of an individual. But combining those two together is what creates assertive communication, and I think a better model for teaching us on how to communicate with each other, for getting what we want in an effective way, for reducing anxiety, depression, alcoholism, bullying, teenage pregnancy, unwanted pregnancy, drug use, all of the alcoholism, suicidality, all the things, and good relationships, right? It helps with relationships. Basically, not one area of the modern world is not benefited by assertive communication. So that's my pitch to you. Is ditch this thing. This thing didn't catch on. We abandoned it, and we haven't really touched it since the 60s or 70s. And there's a good reason for that. It's negative. It's pathologizing. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. And do this. But if you recognize that you have a tribal intelligence, and you have a self-interest, an individual agency, an individual self, an authentic self, and you combine those two together, you will have assertive communication, because that's what appropriate communication is. It is the rules within your tribe. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give me a follow, and we'll talk soon. Cheers.